Been a little while since my last video, but I'm pretty excited about today's topic. So before I get started though, some updates. Uh, as anyone could tell, if they actually, read my updates on my Facebook page, the final glossy, beautiful masterpiece that is Blood Lily is finished. I am done messing with it. Just waiting on my cover, and then I already have everything else completed. So the final PDF version of Blood Lily, along with my 3-page synopsis and my little blurb and my cover art, will be going to the Pitch a Producer program. And I have chosen my producer that I'm going to pitch to. Her name is Kathleen McLaughlin. Very excited about this choice. She's been a producer on Revenge, the TV show, also Salt, the movie, and then she was a writer and creative consultant on a bunch of other movies, including one of my personal favorites of all time, The Bone Collector. So really, really super excited about this opportunity. So once I get that sent off, then I just have to wait for them to read Blood Lily. And considering how tremendously fantastic it turned out, I have very high hopes. Good afternoon, Joanne. It's good to see you. Hi, Dutchie. Good to see you too. So yeah, I'm super, super giddy excited. At work yesterday, I was walking on air. I was so super happy about all the stuff with the book. And I swear that day just tried its damnedest to eat away at my good mood. It really, really did. But towards the end of my shift, I was working with two ladies who are both like my writing, and I took this little scene, and it's not even really a scene. It's like a little snippet, maybe 4 paragraphs, that I added into the end of Blood Lily, and this is right before Chance walks Lilith up to closer to Alvarez's grave, and then she speaks to Gloria. So this happens right before then, and it's a little conversation between the two of them that it hits you in the feels. And just looking at it made me instantly happy. But I showed that little snippet to these two girls, and they loved it so much. And instantly, my awesome mood was right back. So, still super excited. I'm not resting on my laurels, though. Hi, Sarah. I'm not resting on my laurels. I am still hard at work. So I am working on Rose of Jericho. So far, it's actually requiring more edits than Blood Lily. Apparently, when I started writing, or the last version that I edited of Rose of Jericho, I was super bitter. The tone is different than I remember in the beginning. I know that she was upset and had all these weird emotions she was trying to handle, but some of it's just completely unreasonable. So yeah, I'm smoothing that out and making it fit in with the end of Blood Lily so much better. And then Chance is really upset in the beginning of the book, and you kind of know why in the original writing, but I made it a lot clearer this time, because it wasn't very clear before. Before it just seemed like he was just mad at her because she came back for him, or mad at her because, I don't know, you don't know. But I made it much more clear that in the beginning, he wants to know what happened in his apartment, and she does every single thing she can to avoid talking to him about it. She does not want to talk about it because she knows as soon as she says anything about it, he's going to feel so incredibly guilty, and she is just going to be a nervous wreck, and maybe they won't make it through that. And she's not willing to sacrifice that. So she does everything she can to not talk to him about it. And he knows that. He has Cohen's blood. He can tell exactly what she's feeling and how strongly she's feeling it. And he's angry that she won't talk to him. He's really mad about it. So I made that so much clearer in this version. And Lilith is not as mad at him as she is upset and defensive. So it makes more sense now. It's lovely and awesome. But the writing's a lot stronger. I've learned a lot of tips and tricks and stuff that I don't have to rely as heavily on my programs as I did before. It's fantastic. Oh God, you still just, the siren piano, you still just want to punch her in the throat constantly. I love it. She's just pure evil. You just hate her. It's awesome. I love it. So, I mean, the weird thing that I've learned through all of this is that no matter how many times I've edited these books, how many times I've read these books, how well I know the story, how well I know the characters, when I read Blood Lily out loud, I laughed out loud. I cried a lot. So, like, have tissues at the ready when you read it. Just saying. Like, even more so than last time. It definitely is a much stronger punch to the feels. A lot. um, and then, like, I would blush like a 16-year-old girl reading some of this stuff. And then I swear to God, I felt surprised by some of it, and then I wrote it. So I don't know what the hell that means. I really don't. So yeah, I'm super excited to present it. As soon as I know what's going on with the Pitch a Producer program, then I'll have a direction for how I'm going to release the book. I don't want to make those final decisions yet until I've finalized where it's going film-wise. So hopefully where it's going film-wise, because eventually it will. Someone's going to want this project because it's just too amazing to pass up. Like, I just don't see why it wouldn't make an excellent project. So yeah. So recently, me and my fiance started watching a lovely, delightful little Netflix series called The History of Cuss Words, and or The History of Swearing. It's one of those two. It's hosted by Nicolas Cage, of all people, which is just hilarious. And we've watched a few episodes, and it's really entertaining and stuff. And it really got me thinking about my writing. And there's a few age-old debates among writers. Like, there's a few that these debates rage constantly, and there's never ever a victor declared ever. Right? Some of these arguments are the level of violence in a book. Another one is whether or not to use a cliffhanger. Oh, God. That is the most divided question I have ever seen among readers and writers. Like, either people absolutely love them or people absolutely hate them, and there's no in between. There's really not. So that one's tough. But another is the age-old question, do you cuss in your writing? So for me, when I write, I like to write how I talk. And normally, when I'm not being monitored, I curse like a sailor. It's 100% true. But does it need to be in my writing? How I figure this out is what level of adult content is already in my writing. So if you have a book where it's mostly a drama and, there's some hurt feelings and things like that, but there's no sex scenes, there's no violence, it's just two people relating and stuff, then maybe perhaps you don't need cuss words to make your point. Or maybe you only need one or two at a very particular location to really punch you in the feels. Because that's what I use them for. Like, it's not like, let's think about why we cuss in the first place, right? So why do people curse? Because it's a release. Like, when we curse, it's releasing things, or it's amping us up. Those are really the only two reasons we do it. And the interesting thing I learned on that show is that when we're cursing, we can withstand pain 50% longer than when we're not cussing. Like, it has a physical effect on us. It really does. So if it's so powerful, why wouldn't I use it? Like, if it's appropriate, why wouldn't I use it? In my book, I have some excessively violent scenes, especially when you start getting into book 2 and then book 3. Oof, there's violence. If you're already on that level where you're speaking solely to adults, because kids should not be reading my books. They should not. I would never recommend that a child read my book. And it's not because of the cuss words. I mean, I already have adult content in there. I believe, personally, this is my opinion, and I'm not putting anyone else down, so no one else take offense to this. But in my opinion, if I am saying that this situation of excessive violence can happen, the expected response is going to include cuss words. Because it's already at that level. if you have a character who encounters like an insanely mutilated corpse and says, "Oh gosh darn, that's awful," that is not an appropriate reaction. It's really not. I mean, I want everything, like, I strive for reality in my books, and the pure reality is that cuss words exist and we use them. Like, there are people that, especially in certain religions, that do not use cuss words, and that's their choice, and I respect that. But I really don't think those are the people that are going to read my book in the first place. I mean, I have demons and vampires and mutilated corpses. Yeah, it's not really a kid or religious friendly material and to begin with. So cuss words should be expected. Like, I know some authors do omit them because they don't want to offend people, and some omit them because they want to be able to get to that young adult valuable property. It is really valuable property. But as soon as I decided that I wanted my books to be a raw emotional journey going through this poor woman and everything that happens to her, and I wanted it to be, I didn't want to hold back on anything. I wanted it to be like severe. Then I'm abandoning the whole realm of young adult to start with, and I'm abandoning a realm where it's conceivable to not use cuss words. Because you have to. Like, I mean, I don't understand why anyone wouldn't in this situation, personally. So then while we're watching this show, I start thinking about the cuss words that I do use. And I remember when I went back and re-edited my book, I did take a lot of cuss words out, if you can believe that. So the edition that, you guys have all read has less cuss words in it than I had before. And this one, the new one, has a few less than that. Because although we do curse a lot and stuff, maybe we don't have to do it in every sentence. They are very, very powerful, potent tools. And I think that you should choose your spots carefully and use them to accentuate the emotion of a scene. Like when you want to show like extreme anger, not just annoyance. I mean rage, like white hot rage. Use that word. Make it powerful. Just have your character say the word fuck. And I just did it. And I put a disclaimer on this video so no one can get mad at me. I told you I was going to cuss. So, I mean, it's just appropriate. It's an appropriate response. It's a measured response. I don't see it being realistic when someone goes through such trauma that they're not gonna lash out. They're not gonna use those words, those powerful, moving words when they speak. It's just gonna happen. And I tried to think about the different types of words that I used, and I was like, well, what's the number one word I use? And it's definitely 150% the word and its variations of fuck. It happens all the time. Fuck you, fuck this is fucking ridiculous. I use it a lot. I do. It's an emphasis. And then I started to think, I was like, did I use any other cuss words in my book? I can't remember because that one's so prominent. Like, did I use anything else? And then I remembered Spencer. And Spencer, in his rage, he does call her a bitch several times. That's one I try not to just like throw about, because of all the cuss words out there, that's really the only one that I really actually find offensive at times. Like, I mean, when I use it, it's to be offensive, not to the reader, but in dialogue to the subject. And that's another thing. Like, I don't believe that cuss words should be in the narrative unless it's first person and these are the person's internal thoughts. I just don't feel that it has. Riggs, stop. Sorry, my dog heard something like 2 blocks down and now he's going to bark about it. But I don't think it has a place in the narrative. So it should live in the dialogue. It should be part of like emphasizing your character and how they speak. It shouldn't be pointed directly at the audience. If that makes sense. It's the same thing with like anything offensive, like racial slurs. Is it okay to ever use them? In the narrative, No, I don't believe it is okay to ever use them in the narrative, because then you're saying as an author that you believe this and you want to push this into somebody's face. And I just don't feel that's appropriate. I think that's disrespectful. Do I use racial slurs at all? Yes. Yes, I do. If it's appropriate. If I have a character, well, I do. I have several characters. But like I have a character who's a nobleman from medieval Scotland and everybody else is beneath him. Of course he's going to use racial slurs, or, not even racial slurs, but slurs against people's standing and everything else. He's going to look down his nose at people because that's who he is. I also have Whitmore, who is a Southern cop, and he's a cop in Tennessee. And he's like middle-aged, well, not even middle-aged, edging towards older age, set in his ways, backwoods kind of guy. It's not stereotyping. That's my character. My character is prejudice. He is a bigot. Like, it's not a secret. So I do use, like, in his dialogue, I do use, like, racial slurs and things like that, especially towards the end when he's talking about coffee. Not because I believe any of those things, because of course I don't. And I swear I'm going to shoot my dog in the face if he doesn't stop barking. Hold on 1 second. All right, so anyways, now my dog has decided to just continue barking. This is awesome. I don't think a dog whistle actually works. Anyways, so yeah, I don't believe that racial slurs or cussing, anything profane, I don't think that really belongs in the narrative, because then that is the author claiming responsibilities for those things. If it's used in the dialogue that's appropriate for the person speaking, then I do believe that it has a place, because we shouldn't be afraid to discuss those issues, because they are still issues to this very day. Like, as we have seen in this past year in 2020, we have seen that speaking about race and the discussion about race is still as ever present. It's not going away. And we need to have honest conversations about it. And I'm not saying that my book is an honest conversation about race, because it's not. But I do not feel that I should take out a racial slur simply because somebody might find it offensive, because it's not how I feel. This is a representation of my character. I have fleshed out, wholly developed characters. Whitmore is an older man, stuck in his ways, raised in the South. I'm not stereotyping people in the South either. It's just this is who he is. So yes, he does not like coffee, and he calls him several different slurs that, are very popular in the South. Kind of the point is right after that is that Ashcroft is actually offended by his comments, which is kind of weird, because Ashcroft doesn't, he thinks everyone's beneath him, but he just thinks that his comments are short-sighted. And he winds up dying. Not that that's, use a racial slur, you're going to die. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying there is merit. There is merit. And I don't feel that people should hold back simply because they're scared that somebody might not understand what they're trying to accomplish. I don't think that's the way to go. I think that's how we fall deeper into the rabbit hole of being politically correct. I mean, there are some advantages to being politically correct, of course. And, it does kind of, might lose a few readers because of this or because of that. But it's staying true to my intentions, true to wanting to not hold back, true to being open and honest with people and letting them experience this complete journey, not a sugar-coated, sweetened version of it. So I believe that, cuss words do have their place. I believe even slurs have their place. I try to limit those because, I know that it's a very sensitive subject for a lot of people. But I don't think it's something that should be avoided completely on purpose. So for me, it just didn't feel right to have this character, Whitmore, that I had in his mind, like the kind of person that he is, and not have those occurrences happen. Like, the whole reason he doesn't like Chance isn't because he finds him intimidating. It's because he's freaking Cajun. I mean, Whitmore is a bigot. he through and through bigot. He is. And I just wanted to stay true to that and own it and be honest about it. So yeah, that's my view about cuss words and about profanity. And I just realized I didn't scroll down, and people have been talking this whole time. Um, I'm glad that you guys enjoy watching my videos. I appreciate that a lot. Sometimes it is hard for me to think of topics. So if you guys have topics you want me to talk about, please tell me. And yes, I love Nicolas Cage in this show. Right? The history of swear words, history of cussing, whatever it is. I can't remember off the top of my head. The most interesting thing that I've found so far in the series is how he cusses. So the very first episode is about the word fuck. Just the whole episode. It's fantastic. And then they do a couple other cuss words. And then he gets to the one about bitch. Now, when he did the first one, he's like, fuck! Screaming it out loud, doesn't care, says it 5 million times. When he gets to the one about bitch, he's just like, bitch. Like, he says it really quiet and as little as possible. And thank you, Sierra. No filter, only the brutal truth. And that's what I always have tried to do. Like, I don't want it to be filtered at all. Like, I want it to be like, oh my God, what the fuck just happened to me? Like, that's what I want. That's what I'm going for. Okay, let me read some of these comments. And if I agree, but that is the same for mine. Adult books are adult books. Absolutely. And they should be. And thank you. My description of cadavers is amazing. Thank you. My abilities as a nurse has come through for something. Not only that, but I have spent years and years and years watching medical and crime dramas, like pretty much my whole life. It started with my mom's obsession with Murder, She Wrote and Quincy Medical Examiner. And they're completely far-fetched and unbelievable. Almost every single one of them is completely ridiculous. There's no world where a novel writer is going to be actively investigating things is going to be investigating things during active police investigation where they like share information and work together. No. Nope, that doesn't happen. Medical examiners don't go out and chase down suspects or, shoot guns or question people. Like, that doesn't happen. They have a job. They sit in a morgue and they investigate dead bodies. Or they show up at a crime scene and investigate the position and circumstances of the body before taking it back to the morgue. Like, that's the extent of their abilities. That's all they do. And again, that's something I really wanted. I didn't want to perpetuate the fantasies of crime dramas. I wanted to point out the flaws of crime dramas and keep it real and honest, even though I'm putting it in the context of vampires and supernatural creatures. To me, it's a lovely combination. I like it. Don't ever offend your readers. I think there is a line. There is a line, and I think a lot of that has to do with where you place those things. The things that could be offensive, it depends on how you place them, where you place them, the circumstances around where they're placed. It needs to be appropriate. It needs to not be like, hey, I'm going to use this cuss word now just because I can. It should be a measured response, the same level as the stimulus. So if you have like a character who stubs their toe and they might say, oh shit, that's appropriate. We would all do that. Like, I name one person that's watching that wouldn't say that if they stubbed their toe. If you have someone who beats the living crap out of you, of course you're going to look at them and say, fuck you. It's a measured response. And it makes sense in the narrative. Or not in the narrative, but, in the dialogue. But if you're just, in the narrative part of the story, when the characters are not talking and it's just your voice as the author speaking, I don't think it has a place there. The only exception is if it's in first person or like internal thoughts of the character, which is basically dialogue. Then it's okay. When you think of Fight Club, Wanted, those movies, they had a first person narrative where it was constantly that person's perspective and their inner thoughts. And of course, it's really just like dialogue. So, they have cuss words in it. It's fine. NCIS, also not truly believable. I mean, yes, they investigate, it does exist. It's not fiction. They do have crime scene investigators and stuff that work specifically for the military. So, I mean, that part's true. But a lot of the little things in those shows are not realistic, and it's for the sake of, like, time management. If it took them, like, 3 episodes to get a fingerprint back, people would be fucking bored by that point. Like, they really would. They'd be like, no, forget it. I'm done. So, for the sake of, a quick turnaround, they speed up a lot of tests. They do a lot of things, that, to make things, spice things up. Like, there's not a single morgue in this world that has such crappy lighting as in every single one of those shows. It's pitch black, and they have, like, 1 light shining on the body. No, those places are just lit up with fluorescent light everywhere. Like, they're the brightest room you could possibly ever be in. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And it bothers me. And, I'm OCD. I love tearing down some of the stereotypes about crime dramas. It's just like when I was in nursing school. And I learned about the whole shocking a flatline thing. I do mention this in book 1. It blew my mind. It rocked me to my core. I could not believe that Hollywood lied to me so extensively for so long and still continues to do it. Like, you cannot shock a flatline. It doesn't work. You can't jumpstart a heart with electricity. That's not what it does in the first place. So, if you have a flatline, is when there's no electricity running through your heart. It's a mechanical failure where the heart is just stopped. It's stopped. When you shock somebody with those paddles, which are now stickers, by the way, they're not paddles. Nobody uses those anymore. Stickers. When you shock them with those stickers, the whole purpose of them is to interrupt a bad electrical pathway in the heart. Like, if your heart's doing crazy electrical things, if you shock it, it stops it long enough to hopefully reset in a normal rhythm. That's the point. If you have no electric activity in your heart, it's not going to jumpstart it. There's no rhythm to interrupt. It will do nothing. Absolutely nothing. It's pointless. Oh yeah, I think it's strange they can solve a murder in 1 day or a couple. It's not realistic. It isn't realistic. That's not the majority of anything. What is also not realistic is that the first or second person that you meet is always the killer. Like, it's also not realistic. I mean, those are all part of the tropes that I talked about a couple episodes ago. Like, when I was talking about tropes, and it's painful. Like, when you can wrap things up in like a half hour or an hour, it's not realistic. There are a few exceptions to crime dramas where I've found some realism in them, and even that is not 100%. But the 2 that I found that were most realistic would be Dexter. Dexter was fairly realistic, honestly, as far as the processes and everything else go. How much access he had, being a blood splatter analysis, getting in some gray areas. Still had some stylized lighting that you wouldn't necessarily see, but, it was more realistic setting than some of these, like CSI Miami, where they work in a stupid glass piece of art instead of a police station. They don't look cool. They're functional, not works of art. It's not a high level, like, corporate lawyer office or something like that. I mean, it's a government police station. If you've seen a government building, they're about as exciting as a saltine cracker. Not very. Adrenaline to the heart. This is a good question. And that is about the only thing you can do if a person has a flatline, there's no electrical activity. There are only 2 things that you can do to try and turn that around. 1, CPR. And CPR does not magically restart the heart either. All it is doing is all you're doing is physically compressing the heart from the outside to pump blood through the body. You're doing the work of the heart while the heart's not doing its own work. That's why the compressions have to be a certain rate, and they have to be a certain amount of pressure. Because it takes work to actually crush in that rib cage enough to press on the heart and squeeze the blood out. The whole point is you need to maintain blood pressure and circulation throughout the body, or those drugs that you give them will never go anywhere. They will sit exactly where you put them. So, adrenaline, also norepinephrine or epinephrine, it's pretty much the only other thing you can do. Is you give epinephrine while you're doing CPR so it can be circulated, and that will hopefully stimulate the sympathetic nerve system, which is what, kind of kicks in the fight or flight response, hopefully restarting your heart while you're trying to fix the mechanical reason for the failure. So yeah, can't shock a flat line. There's little medical information for you guys. I'm not going to go too far in the rabbit hole of medical stuff because I'll get lost. But yes, adrenaline, the other name for that is epinephrine. Yes, that's the only other thing you can do. That and CPR. Loved watching Dr. G on TLC when she had her series on Friday. I'm not familiar with that. I might have to check into that. I did love Dexter. Dexter was awesome. And when I was on COVID quarantine recently, I watched like all 8 seasons. And I'll tell you, the last episode still pisses me off to this day. It's the worst season finale of any show I've ever seen. It just makes me angry. And I'm so sad that it ended that way. But I do know they're coming back with another season. It's I'm excited. Hopefully it doesn't let me down. I did see that, the actor who plays Dexter, his purpose and mission in doing this extra season is to make up for the really horrific series finale that Dexter had. It was just awful. It was awful. Yeah, so many people were mad. So, yeah. I think the same about the ending. Yes, it was really, really bad. There's a medical examiner on the case Anthony trial. Oh, okay. The other show that I was going to mention too that had a level of realism in it, believe it or not, was Bones. So the circumstances of the FBI using people who work in a museum, not really super realistic. Like maybe once or twice as a consultant, but like to regularly team up and have their own like lab there, probably not. The realism of an artist instantly becoming like where she can actually rebuild faces and stuff like that. There's schooling, and it is very exact science, and it is like close to a doctorate's degree. An artist doesn't just walk off the street and say, "Oh yeah, I can give that skeleton a face." Like, not realistic at all. No. However, the science they used in that show, when it came to the bodies especially, the science they used in that show was pretty accurate. Like, when they actually called body parts and bones different things, some of the things they pointed out on the bones, a lot of that stuff was very real. Very real. One of the exceptions to that is the fact that she could tell the age and whether it was male or female just by looking at the bones very quickly. It's very difficult to differentiate age and sex from just looking at a skeleton. I mean, there are some tells that they did mention about, like, you can tell if like someone's most likely had childbirth because of certain stresses and things like that. I mean, that's very true. But age is a lot harder to tell. You can do ranges, but it's not going to be like this is a 23-year-old female. It's going to be like this is an adult female over the age of 21. I can tell because of the teeth. So wisdom teeth are the last ones to come in, and they usually come in your early 20s. So if you already see wisdom teeth protruded, then you know they're probably over 20. Beyond that, you have to actually do tests on the bones to figure out the age of the bones. And then male and female is very, very slight differences. There are a little bit of differences in like the mandible and the jaw and stuff like that, but you do have women that have very strong jaws, and you have men that have very weak jaws. So you can't solely go by that. You can make an educated guess, but you can't say for certain this is a female or this is a male just by looking at it. You have to take measurements, make assumptions, things like that, try and piece it into other evidence that you have to try and formulate that opinion. So besides that, but there was a lot of really good science in that show. And when I was taking anatomy and physiology, it was kind of like studying. It was like, oh yeah, that's right. Oh, that is the name of that bone there. That's great. You know, it was fun. So I did enjoy that. And by the way, just so you know, when I was in college, especially when I was in Chattanooga State doing my prerequisites and stuff, my nickname was Temperance because of the show Bones. Um, I'm very OCD, and I'm intelligent. Before I went into the nursing program, I was a 4.0 straight A student. Um, when I was in anatomy and physiology too, in Chattanooga State, it was an extremely tough class. Like, so tough. You had to be able to identify things by sight and write the name. It wasn't multiple choice. And if you even spelled it wrong, you got the whole entire answer wrong. Like, it was hardcore. And there's me and two students that I was tutoring, who are both test bunnies of mine, actually. It was Robin Sullivan, although she has a different last name now because she got married, and Amanda Clark. And these were the two students that I tutored in anatomy and physiology 2. And the lab final, we were the only 3 students that got an A. Just saying. So I'm OCD, and I'm really, really concerned with accuracy. So yeah, my nickname was Temperance. And then I actually got to take an intro to forensic science class. That was kind of like a guinea pig class that they were thinking about offering. And I loved it. It was so great, especially the parts with the bones. And I got to do all this stuff just like on Bones. However, what they don't show in these TV shows is it's a lot of back-breaking, super tedious work. Like, it really is. To dig up a skeleton, you're taking like minuscule little teaspoons of dirt at a time and sifting them. It takes weeks to dig up a body. Weeks. Because you can't lose any evidence whatsoever. Everything has to go through a sifter, and you have to go excruciatingly slow and document everything. And I was like, I can't do that. It feels like the TV show, great, but no, not that. So just so you know, appreciate those people out in the field, because that's terrible, terrible work. Let's see, they tested the teeth of my bear to figure out the age. It was cool. Oh yeah, that is cool. 3 years old. That's neat. That's cool. Yeah. Yeah, I also got to learn about like blood splatter patterns and stuff like that, which was really cool. Dexter was very, very accurate on that. And some of the techniques that he used with like the red yarn and stuff like that, those are real techniques that, you know, real police officers do use. So yeah, there's a lot of truth. There's more truth today in the newer crime dramas than there was. Now some of them, like the NCISs and the newer CISs and stuff like that, they got away from a lot of the original truths. The original CSI was based really firmly in actual science. Now, again, the setting was not realistic because the lighting, that's the biggest thing. They have this dramatic lighting because it produces a feeling for the audience. Like, there's a purpose behind it, and I get that, but it's not realistic. But the actual science of the original CSI show was incredibly accurate. It was the most accurate thing at the time. And one of the first books I read on forensics was The Truth Behind CSI. And it was awesome. I learned so much stuff from it and have used it in my books. So it's really cool. And then Google has made my life so much easier because I can Google all kinds of things, and not just science, which is great, but because I do, even though I am a nurse and I do know a lot, I mean, there's still things I have to look up. One of the hardest things for me to find was for book 2. I wanted to know the difference in soil that would indicate that a body was buried in that soil. And I knew that there were certain chemicals or certain, you know, amounts of chemicals that would indicate that, and I wanted to know that, but it's a very hard thing to research, and I swear I hope no one ever investigates my Google search history, because I'm in some big trouble. So no one get accidentally murdered around me, please, because I can't be a suspect. It'd be bad. So yeah, that was one of the biggest things to look up. But Google Translate is my savior, because I have used a lot more French in the first book. I realized that in the second book, I did use a lot of French, especially between Cohen and Chance, because Chance is Cajun, and they do use French, and Cohen is from Europe and knows French. So they sometimes fight in French in front of her. But it's kind of abrupt because in Bloodlily, I didn't use a lot. I used like cher and chérie, but I didn't really use a lot. And he does use more French in this. Like, he actually says phrases in it and stuff, too. None of which she knows what the hell mean. But, like, and he does cuss at Cohen once in French in Bloodlily now to kind of establish that and, you know, that he knows exactly what he's saying. But I did add a scene. The scene I was talking about earlier that makes me all teary-eyed and weepy is a scene right before they walk up to Alvarez's funeral and stuff, and he calls her mon chéri, and she, for like the billionth time, and she asks like, you know, what does that mean? You know, 'cause, you know, I never took French, and he says it means my sweetheart, and it's a very emotional moment. You know, I won't get too far into it, but it's a very emotional moment. So I had to point that out, that, you know, he's saying all these things, but she doesn't know exactly what he's saying. And he uses all kinds of phrases in there, guys. If you look them up, you'll see what he says. It's great. He says, I love you. He calls her the love of his life several times, all in French, and she has no idea. It's fantastic. I love it. Oh yeah, check the grammar before you publish, because Google, yeah, it does have horrible grammar. And what I did is, a lot of times I went to websites that have complete phrases on there, which is what I was looking for. So he doesn't really speak in whole sentences so much as it's phrases that I can verify are actual, you know, real phrases, the way that they're set up. Then I take that phrase and I put it into Google Translate and ask it to translate from that to English to double check, so that if anyone takes that phrase and puts it into Google Translate, they know exactly what he's trying to say. So I was very paranoid about that. So yeah, I have. And not just French, you know, Alvarez and his wife are Spanish, from Spain. So I did use some of that as well, but I tried to limit that because it's very hard to find anything concrete that differentiates between the Spanish dialect spoken in Spain and Spanish spoken in like Mexico and South America, because it is different. So, and it's just like also with Chance, I tried to stick with Cajun words because although Cajun is based in French, there is a different dialect when it comes to Cajun. So speaking pure French, I tried to stay away from, but there's some things that I couldn't find. I did purchase a Cajun to English dictionary that's coming in the mail, so that I'm better prepared. And I did find a really good website that had a ton of different phrases on it. But there were still some things that were missing. And one of them was like the love of my life. I couldn't find that in a whole complete phrase like I could in French. But it would make sense that he would understand and be able to speak French, which is fine. And I'm fine with that. It's a small differentiation. But I try to use, if I know the Cajun, I try to use the Cajun first, and then I'll go into French. I can feel the emotion. Oh, you have no idea. You have no idea, though. Can I read you guys this little scene? Can I read it? Because it's fantastic. You guys will love it, right? I think everyone here has read the first book at least, because this is in the first book, obviously. But like I said, it's when her and Chance are standing at the funeral, and they're talking and stuff about different things. And it's right before they get ready to head up there. And she's kind of like having trouble breathing and everything else. So he says this to her. I'll just read it to you guys, and hopefully I won't cry on camera because it still makes me all weepy-eyed. Hold on a second. Let me get to it. There it is. A comfortable silence settled over them as she laid her head against his shoulder. If only she could lose herself in the warmth of his solace, without the nagging feeling that horrible consequences awaited them for escaping. A gut reaction that an overpaid psychiatrist would label survivor's guilt. Breathe, mon chéri. His low, rumbling voice infused her dark thoughts with affectionate light, making the future seem less ominous. With a tear-filled with a tear-filled expression of gratitude, she gazed up at him. What does that mean, by the way? I never took French. For a moment he seemed content to simply smile down at her with a brilliant glow, as if trying to convince himself that she was real. It means my sweetheart. A luminous smile lit her face as she pressed a tender kiss to his lips and whispered, I love you too. She started to pull back, but he wrapped his arms around her, still trembling. Slow, deep breaths tickled along her neck, moist with tears, as they stood enveloped in a bubble of warmth, fending off the darkness surrounding them. I barely made it through that, guys. Like, I wrote it and it still makes me teary-eyed. And I can't count how many times I've read that part, because it's now one of my new favorite pieces ever. Sorry. Okay. I'm back. Okay, so yeah, that's my little scene that just, like, no matter what, if I read that, I'm just giddy. I'm giddy and sad and, like, yeah. It's emotional. It hits you in the feels. It hits me in the feels. I don't know. Hopefully you guys love it too. Yes. There is one other thing that Chance says too, and it's after she saves his life in Phipps Bend, but before she races off to the basement by herself. I know you're not crying. Oh, I'm not crying. You're crying. Yes, I know. I am crying. I was teary-eyed. It hits me. So there is one other part that I added, one little thing that he says that I really truly love, and it just, you know, makes me glow inside. And that's she sets him up in the room by himself after she saves his life, and he's still really injured before she runs off to try and save her dad. He looks at her and and this is paraphrasing. I'm not going to actually read the part because it'd take me a while to find it. But he looks at her and he's like, is it, the result of like blood-induced delusion, or did you say that you loved me? Because when he's dying, she does say that, don't leave me, I love you. So he remembers that. And he asks her, and then she gets all embarrassed and stuff, and she's like, well, I mean, you were dying, and like, shit, I said that too soon. Kind of reaction. And he just kind of smiles and looks at her, and he's like, it only took you 13 years and a bullet to the chest to catch up. And I love it. See, getting teary-eyed again. It's awful. It's awful. Whew. Yeah, it hits me in the feels pretty hard. Pretty much everywhere. It's fantastic. And the writing is so much stronger. So I'm really, really happy that I had this English professor read my book and say, your grasp of the English language is appalling, basically. So that I could fine-tune this thing into the masterpiece that it is. And I just really, truly love it. And I can't wait to share it with you guys. So excited. So, composed myself. So next week, I'll try and think of something to talk about next week. Just so you guys know, Chapter 5 is live on YouTube. I have already recorded Chapter 6, and that is pre-designed and pre-uploaded and everything to be released on Tuesday, this next coming Tuesday at 1 p.m. So that'll be released. Depending on how many views I get, I may or may not continue reading, because the first video, Chapter 1, has like 62 views, and then it drops significantly to like 17, and to like 10, and to like 3, and then it's 7, oddly enough. So some people like skipped Chapter 3 and went right to Chapter 4, I guess. I don't really know. But in Chapter 5 only has like 1 view so far. It's probably Joanne, I'm guessing. But I mean, if it's something people are still interested in, I will continue to do that. But if I don't see a lot of views, I might just leave it there as the teaser and just stop there. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. If you guys have any questions, any topics that you want me to talk about, I would love to hear them. That'd be fantastic. Give me something to talk about next time. I did enjoy this topic. I think it was very important to speak about, and kind of, set things in motion and let people think about the whole discussion of the merit that those cuss words have, because they do have real power. Those words have power in our lives. They really do. And I think it's a very important tool if it fits the tone of your work. It can be a very potent tool, and I believe you should use it. That's my personal opinion. I don't want to like downplay anyone who decides not to use cuss words. That's your choice. I'm just defending my choice to use them. So if you guys have anything, any questions, comments, anything like that, I love you guys. Thank you so much for watching. You guys really keep me going and keep me inspired, and I appreciate it so much. And that's why I have so much energy and passion for what I'm doing, is because of people like you that keep me going. And I really love it. Like, Joanne's like my #1 cheerleader. She's fantastic. She's been with me pretty much from the beginning. I'm pretty sure she has the original printing of Blood Lily somewhere. I'm pretty sure she does. So yeah, I thank you guys for your support. I really do. Love you guys. Get back to me with any questions, and hopefully I'll be able to do a live stream again next week if I think of something to talk about. Talk about love scenes. Oh, that's pretty good. Yeah, I'll talk about that. I have some deep-seated opinions on love scenes that may not be incredibly popular, but we'll find out. We'll talk about it. We'll discuss. Thank you. I appreciate that. Like, I honestly get way more out of it than you guys get, I think. Like, I love it. It really helps me a lot. And it keeps me focused, and I love it. So, and Rose of Jericho. Oh, yep. It's going to be fantastic. So excited. And you guys know that as soon as I have word about anything, I'll let you know. Just so that you guys are aware, though, once I send everything in, the wait time is typically about 6 weeks if they're going to read your entire book. So, it may be a while till I have actual news, but, as soon as I do, you guys will know it. I'll be on here talking about it. So, yeah, next week I'll talk about love scenes then. That's great. I like that. All right. And thank you. I hope I do help other people. It makes me feel happy. I really love it. All right, guys. Thank you so much, and I will see you guys next week, okay?